Okay, so when you drafted this pattern, you used your 1 dart back bodice block. And that absorbed a fat 1/8 of an inch of ease. So when you go to line your front and back bodices up, they don't align. The back will be too big for the front. So when we copied our back bodice, we copied our back bodice notches, right? They were 1 inch from the shoulder tip on the dot paper. This is now from the brown with the seam allowance on it, but they were on the dot paper 1 inch from the shoulder tip and 1 inch from the high point shoulder. You need those notches on your front too, so that I'm trying to use the convention of red pins for notches when I'm showing demos on camera, so hopefully that'll help. So you'll wanna use those notches, because what that's going to do is it's going to put the excess in the middle, so you don't like shove it off one under the other, which will mess with your fit a bit. So this gets eased, and we learned a whole bunch of ways to ease in 1A. We learned about crimping, and we learned about ease stitches probably, but I like the million pin method. So basically what I do is I take that extra bubble and I pinch it in the middle, and I put half the ease on one side of the middle and half on the other side of the middle, and I put a pin in it. And then I take that bubble and I smush that and put half of my excess on each side of the middle and stick a pin in it. And I just keep pinning until my extra is kind of gone. And sometimes it takes more than that, but this was a pretty small amount. But I just pin it until it seems like it's going to be even, and then I just sew it with a regular stitch, pulling out the pins before I get there. So make sure you have your notches, and like if you're doing this after the fact, you know, because you already have this this cut out and you need to add the notches, make sure you make the notation on your pattern, so when you turn it in for reals, it's got the right notches on it. But if you've got it already cut out,
Are the notches on the front and the back, or just
yeah, because you match them up.
Okay.
So if you don't have them on the front, you can just, you know, measure and put them on. Or what I did in this case was I just matched up the high point shoulder and the neck, and then made sure that it was flat up to the notch on the back, and then pinned it. And then at the high point shoulder, made sure it was flat up to the notch on the back, and then pinned it. Right? So there's no ease in this section right here. All the ease is in the middle. So you can do that just to jury rig it while you're sewing. And then when then you go fix your pattern so that it's right. But don't panic if you don't have your notches. And I was also telling them earlier that in like real life, we probably wouldn't have these notches. The sewing ladies would just sew it. Like they just know. And that's why notches are important, because if you don't put notches where they are important like this, they would just like, oh, this is supposed to match, and they just sew it. Or they might run it off the edge, depending on you have to know your people. But you have to have notches where they're important, otherwise they'll just make it up and they won't do what they're supposed to do. So that's all I wanted to show you with the shoulder.